Hey everybody, George Snelling here. Today we are going to do a simple tutorial of how to use the basic elements of Google Sheets. Too often, sheets are already made and documents are already made for us, and we don't know the very basic stuff to navigate them, so we're stuck with whatever they've given us. So hopefully this will inform you guys the basic things to do in case resizing, self-merging, cell sizes, validations, conditions. We're going to go over a bunch of things to try to make a worksheet, and hopefully this will help you in your classes or whatever work you guys have to do. So the very first thing is we want to start here at Google, and typically you'll be logged in already. If not, when you go to your Google Drive, it will ask you to log in. Up here at the right hand corner, it'll say log in. So this little checkered board, calendar looking thing, we're going to click that. What I like to do when I do any of my documents on Google Drive, uh, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, any of those things, you can go to the specific ones, but typically what I like to do is I like to go straight to the drive. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on the drive, Google Drive, and then that'll take me into my drive. Here in a second, you'll be able to see all the folders and stuff that I have set out. The reason I like doing it this way is because your options in Drive kind of look a little different. They kind of look more functional, like you're looking in a folder on a computer. So if you want to share something or anything, which we'll get into a little bit later, it's real easy to do from Drive, where it might be a little more tasking with Google Sheets or Google Docs when you went straight into those different apps. They look different too. So we're going to create a new sheet. So right over here, we want to just click New, and then Google Sheet. So we'll click that, and immediately it will open up a wonderful spreadsheet for us. Now, the setting up of our spreadsheet is very important because later on we'll like, where did that go? We don't know because it's called untitled sheet or things that help us move along and be organized. It's better if we have names. So, untitled spreadsheet up here, we want to change that. For this tutorial, we are going to do a book checkout form. So if you're a teacher and you're giving out your books to the kids, you're assigning the books to the kids, why not have a sheet that you could fill out so it's all organized, and you can even share it with the kids so that way they can come and say, hey, what book do I have? What book have I checked out? You're like, okay, well, just go to your Google Drive and look. So we're going to give this a title, and we're going to call it Book Checkout Form. That's what it is. Checkout form. As soon as you click it, now, good thing about Google Online, Google Sheets, Google Drive, all those things. As soon as you do it, it's automatically saved. You don't have to worry about saving it or your power going off. Like, oh no, I didn't save it. It saves it for you automatically. So it just solves a lot of problems because it automatically saves it. As soon as I name this, boom, it's already saved. All right, and let's go ahead down at the bottom here. See where it says Sheet 1? If we double click on that, we're able to rename that as well. And since we're going to do validation and stuff like that later, it's very important that our sheets actually have names besides sheet 1, sheet 2. You want to be descriptive. You want to tell people, hey, what is it? And so this is the form itself, right? So again, the book checkout form. All right. Now, not to be redundant, but those are the options that we see. That's not the form itself, right? That's just the setting up of our worksheet. It's not the form itself. So we are also going to type in book checkout form right here in box A1. You'll notice here in Google Sheets, across the top are letters, and going down on the side are numbers. So it's a grid A1. So this cell is A1. And just like this would be B1, see, B, and then cell 1. Alright, so here in A1, we're just going to type book checkout form. I always like to think about it as there's stuff that we see, and then there's stuff that we want the users to see, right? There's our part, and then there's their part. The title of your form, they might see that too in their drive and help them clarify things, but for the most part, that helps us keep organized. And then down here in the bottom tabs, we probably don't even want them to mess with those bottom tabs, but we certainly are going to mess with those bottom tabs, and so we want to organize ourselves. All right, so book checkout form is what we're calling it, and then second, we probably want what class it is, right? So I'm going to type Intro to Business because I'm just going to pick that class. That's one of my classes that I teach. So, and then I probably want to, I teach 2 hours this next semester, so I'm going to say this is 7th hour. So I teach them 7th and 8th hour. So you would put in your class however you want to do that. All right. So then we have to decide, what do we want to know from the kids, right? What information do we want on our form? So the first thing I would think would be the student, right? We want to know which kid we're talking about. So we type in student. This next box, the second thing we want to know is, hey, the book number. Right? So we have student, book number. What's the third thing? This might be really easy for you to do assigned seats, right? That's why a third one might be good. For me, I have computers in my class, so for me, it would be computer number. If you're doing desks, why won't you number your desks? It makes sense that if you have your desks in order, then you could say, hey, you're at A1, grid it out just like Excel or however you want to do it. But it would be good to know, even if you're not going to end up with them in their seats. So let's suppose it's the first day of school and they come in and they sit wherever. And then you're checking out a book. Let them check out the book, let them write their seat number, and then later on you're going to have their name, their book number, and you'll be able to just move these around and assign the seats that you want to. So a lot of times when the kids first come in, you may not know every single one of their names, right? Well, with this book checkout form, their names are going to be on here, and so you can just assign them accordingly. You can just change these around. But it's a good starting point to have them go ahead and put their name, where they're sitting, and then their book number. Besides that, it's going to help you determine, like, oh, I don't know this kid. Oh, they were sitting here. Okay, I saw it was a blonde girl that was sitting here at desk 5, or however you guys want to set that up. So anyhow, we have the basics of our forms now, of our form. We have the book checkout form, which is the title, the class it's going into, student, book number, computer number. Now, how many kids do we think we're going to have? Typically your classroom or whatever is only going to sit so many kids. Mine's 20, but I'm going to leave an extra one for me, and so I'm going to go down to 21. Now, if you click on a cell, basically it just highlights that cell. You're not actually into the cell, and typically that's not how you want to enter data in, right? So the first click, it just kind of highlights and shows you where you're at. If you double click, look at there. Now it is into the cell. Now is when you want to put in your formulas and stuff like that. So there's a difference between going into the cell and just highlighting the cell. So if I go into the cell, now if I click and drag, look, I can't go anywhere. I can't highlight. I can't do anything, right? And a lot of people I've taught, a lot of students I've taught, they'll be like, oh, I can't highlight cells. Well, it's because they're in the cell. They're not just highlighting it, they're actually into it. So the best thing to do would be, until you're ready to type, just to single click it. And then if you click and hold your mouse button, and you can drag over to other cells, like so. See, I highlighted cells, so if I just click and highlight. Now if I double click, of course I couldn't do that. See, I can't. Even if I click and drag, it's still not going to go anywhere. So that's the difference. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to highlight all of our cells and then go down to however many we need. So I'm going to click on the first one and go over to C, and then I'm going to drag down to 21. There. So I have the cells that I'm going to use highlighted. Now, a form typically needs some kind of structure. Just nothing else. Your mental note, right? You're making a mental note of what the form looks like. Is it a form? If we just left this without any borders or anything like that, it probably wouldn't look like a form, and therefore you might feel like you don't have, like your design wasn't correct, like you're doing something wrong. You're not doing anything wrong, but that's why we want to put a border, because it gives it structure. So, now that it's highlighted, let's go ahead and put a border around it. Up at the top here, you have options. Right over here, lots of options up here. And so, the border one that we want happens to be this little check mark box here. It looks like a tic-tac-toe box. And just so you know, it's consistent in Excel as well. So what we're doing here in spreadsheet, Google Sheets, is pretty close to the same as Excel. So Excel is going to have this nice little border box as well. In Excel, I would recommend you right-click and then go to border. Go to Cell Properties and then the border. But in here in Google Sheets, we'll use it right here. And then we don't want to click this directly. We want to click the little black arrow right beside it. Now the difference is, when you click this button, you're going to get what it's showing you there, right? So if I click that right now, it's going to put a border around every single individual cell, which later on we may want that, but currently we don't. So I want to click the little arrow beside it. And when you do that, you get these other options that pop up. Lots of other options. Down here, on this one, it's going to tell you what kind of border do you want. Do you want dashes, dots, solid? In this case, we want a solid one. This first one here, it gets rid of all the borders. So if you had borders, it gets rid of them. And then, of course, you can see wherever the dark line is, that's where those are going to put them in there. So bottom, right, top, left. Now we're going to pick this outline border because we want to outline our form. So just click it once. And then voila, you see that you have a nice little outline border that goes around. And you can't see it, but it goes around the entire way. Okay. So we're starting to come together, but we're not quite there yet. So our title and our classroom need to offset from each other. They shouldn't be the same, right? When you're doing a form, when you have different important elements, you want to separate them, and normally that's done by color. So eventually we are going to separate those by color. But first, we want to make sure this title, if we were to make this title bigger right now, so like I'm going to grow this title by going up to the font, using this drop down. This is the font type, this is the font size. So if I make this, say 18, if I click here, you see how that is cutting it off? It's because this is in the first cell, and even though it's showing us these others, it's going through and we're actually being able to see it all because it's going through these cells, these are different cells. If I was to type into this cell right now, I'm just going to put a P. What happened? Yeah, it cut it off because this is one cell, this is another. So what we would like to do is, why not make this one cell? A good way to do that is we're going to click and highlight those cells. And then there's a button up here called Merge. Right? So Merge Cells. Now you can see, hopefully you can see, it's pretty little here, but black arrows, one going in, another one going in. So they're kind of going in towards each other. That's basically saying that it's going to take multiple cells and move them together into one cell. So if we just click this button, all of a sudden, you see the individual cells went away. Now we're merged. Alright. Titles are typically centered, right? So let's just go ahead and center it. Over here, horizontal alignment, we want a little black arrow right beside that, and we want to select center. When we do, voila, it goes center. Now let's do the same thing for our class. We're just going to highlight the 3 cells, merge it, and then center it. Good. Okay, So now we want our title to be important. So we're going to click it and then just click this B. The B is for bold, so it'll make that a little bit more important. The next that I talked about before, we're going to change colors. So here, this Intro to Business 7th Hour, I'm going to change the color of that. Again, up here on this little ribbon, we have our little quick options, and the background, this fill bucket. Just imagine you're pouring paint right into that cell, right? That's why it's a fill bucket, because it's filling up that cell. We want it to stand out. Typically, most schools and stuff use black and white printers, so we kind of want to watch what colors we use, so that way when they print, you can actually read them. Because if we used, I don't know, black and dark gray, on your computer you'd be able to see that. When it prints out, you probably won't. So let's go ahead and make this black. Now our text is black, and I just made the fill black, and that's why you can't see it. Anytime you're wondering, hey, is my text inside this cell? If you click that cell right up here, you'll be able to read it. Okay, so because we have black and white printers, black background, a white font. Over here, this A with the underline, text color, we want to change that to white. There. See, now it's kind of coming together here. Looks like we have a little bit more of a form. Which leads me to the next thing, moving our cells around. So right now, this is such a little square. You can zoom in on your web page if you wanted, or in Excel you have the plus symbol down at the bottom right that you can make it zoom in, zoom out, and make you feel more comfortable. Right now I think this is real little and you just kind of feel awkward using it. I don't know, it's just a little, we're groomed to see things a certain way, and a sheet of paper with a form on it, it's big, right? So here in Excel, this isn't so big. So we need to adjust it so we feel comfortable. Now, if you want to change the size of a cell or move things around, up here at the top, you see these little line separators, right? Every one of these letters has a line in between it. And you can see as I scroll over them, those lines, all of a sudden I'm getting arrows. And the arrows go both ways. Because essentially, this line allows me to move that cell this way or that way, to the right or to the left, make it bigger or smaller. So for right now, I'm going to click in between the C and the D, right on that line. I'm going to click it, and I'm going to drag it to the right. See, now it's starting to feel more like a form. Our book checkout, we can go ahead and make that font a little bit bigger, just make it a little bit more important. And now all of a sudden, and I grabbed in between the B and the C, and I made the book number a little bit bigger. And then, of course, the student name, that's probably not enough space for a student name, so let's go ahead and make that a little bigger as well. See, now we have more of a size here. Okay, so student, book number, computer number. Right now, this font is about the size of the font we want the students to be on. So I would say that we want these titles to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to click and highlight those cells. Now when those cells are highlighted, when we do something, it'll happen to all the cells. So if we were to change the color, it would change the color of all those cells. If we were to change the font, it would change the font of all of them. And that's what we're going to do. So up here right now it says the font size is 10. Well, typically you would want 12, right? And then since these are titles, we're going to make them a little bit bigger than that. So I'm going to go with 14. Yeah, kind of more important now, isn't it? Next, we need students, book number, computer. Well, chances are we already know our students. We can get it from our rosters, and why not, instead of, because it takes, it's very time consuming when you're going through your whole class giving everybody a book. Very time consuming. So wouldn't it be better if when a kid gets a book, you'd be like, Johnny, right? You'd be able to click a button and all your kids pop up and you can just click Johnny's name. And then the same thing with our books. We know how many books we have. We know what their numbers are. Typically the numbers relate to how many books there are. So, like if it was 89-01, well, that tells me it was bought in 1989, and it's book number 1. Don't worry, I have no books that old, thank goodness. But that just gives you a good example. So this leads us to the next part. The next part is going to be validation and using different sheets. So down at the very bottom, you see, bottom left-hand corner, you see a plus. When you click that plus, it adds a sheet. So go ahead and click it once now. And it'll come in and it says sheet 2. And you can see you click on that first one, it goes back, and then you click on the second one, it goes to the new thing. Right? So the first sheet is our form itself, and that's why we titled it Book Checkout Form. The second sheet is going to be where we put all the information. That's where we're going to put our class students' names. That's where we're going to put how many books we have. That's how we're going to put a computer number in my case. So down here at the bottom, what this is data. And so that's what I like to name the sheet that has all the data. I like to just call it data. Remember, for the most part, these sheets are for you. You're not going to have the students aren't going to come in here and look up. They're not going to come to this data page, or, I mean, they could, but you don't expect them to. Any of your users to your forms, you don't want, typically you want them to use the form. So this other stuff, it's for you. So we're calling it data. And what do we need? We need our students in. So you would just type your students' names. Me, as an example here, I'm just going to put student 1. And then this brings me to a good teaching moment here. When you click a cell, down at the bottom right-hand corner of that cell, you see this little dot? When I scroll over that dot at the bottom right-hand corner, it goes to a crosshair. Now, the good thing about this little dot, if I scroll over it, and then I click it, if I drag a cell over, it'll repeat that. If I drag it down, it'll repeat it. And another thing Excel's good at, right now it sees I have student 1. Since I gave it a number, Excel assumes, okay, this is the first student. So if I was to drag down with that, see, Excel automatically knew, I keep saying Excel, Google Sheet automatically knows that, hey, if this is the second one, he went down 1, so if this is student 1, then if he goes down, it must be student 2. And I'm going to click and go ahead and drag that down to 21, because that's how many I have. So student 1, and it repeated it down to student 21. Alright, the next thing was the book. So I'm going to put book 1, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to click that knot at the bottom right-hand corner, click it, and drag down to 21. And you can see the book's filled in. And then finally, computer 1, and I'm going to drag it down 21. There we go. So we have our data. And remember, these student names, of course, these student 1, student 2, those will be your students. So John Smith, Sarah Smith, Sue Smith, whatever. And then your books, you could say book 1, depending on how yours are numbered. And then what their assigned seat is, however you figured that out, or what their seat is that they're at. Alright, now that we have our data there, we need to be able to pull it. Alright, we need to be able to use that data. So let's look down at the bottom and click back on that book checkout form. Of course, that takes us back to our wonderful form that we made. And we want to be able to select a student right here at A4. Okay? And then we want to be able to select a book right here at C4. And then, of course, the computer number at C4. So let's start with the student, A4. Now, we want to call this, or we want to get it, and it's called validation. So at the very top, it's data that we're messing with, right? We want to get data, so they appropriately named it data. And then validation. So when we click validation, we get this wonderful little pop-up box here. And the first thing we notice here is right here in cell range. It says book, checkout, form, and then it'll say A4. Basically, it's saying the cell that we've clicked on right here is what's in this box. So it put that information in for us. We could change that if we wanted, but if we wanted to make it a different cell or whatever. But it's just easier to click on the cell that you want and then validation, so that way it automatically puts that in there for you. Alright, next, criteria. Lists from a range, right? We're going to pick a list from a range. We could pick other lists and stuff, but in this example, we do not want to. Lists from a range. A range is from like A1 to A20, right? That would be a range. It's a group of cells, a range of cells that it stands over. So we want to set what ones we're looking for. We're looking for students. So right here, we're going to put the information is where the range is, where the data is for students. Now, we could just type this out, but why work harder, right? We would have to put the open quotes, data, and then whatever the range is and all that information. Let's go ahead and select it. If we scroll over that, you see where it says select data range? Because why type it all out when we can just click and drag, right? Or we can just click the appropriate thing. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, and it minimizes. Okay, it says what data? So now we're going to go to our data sheet, and we're going to select the data that we're using, right? Now, if I select this cell, I can either click and drag, and then it would only highlight from 1 to 21. But I'm telling you, what if you wanted later on to do 22, 23, 24, 25? What if you wanted to do that later? So since this is only data, and this is only a student data, we can go ahead and click up here on the A, and that means this whole row, this whole column is going to be picked up. So if we add to it, that's fine. It's going to pick that up too. Alright, so data, AA. And say OK. And then we're going to save it. And we should be good to go. Let's go back to our book checkout form and see if it's there. Sure enough, look at here. A little drop-down box. And if I click that drop-down box, there's all my students. Alright, let's repeat the process for book, except this time we'll use book numbers, of course. Alright, so we're going to click on there, data, validation. It already found the cell that we're on. And now we need to minimize that, go to our data, and this time we want the books. So I'm going to select B and say OK. And then save. Now I'm going to check it, go back to the book checkout form, let's look and see if it's there. Sure enough. Now if I use that drop down, look at there, all the books. Then finally the computer number, same process. Go up to the top, click data, go to validation. It has the cell that we're on right now. We are going to select the data range on this one, go to data, and we're going to highlight now row C because that's where our computers are at. Say OK, and save. And we go back to the book checkout form. Now we have students and student, book number and book number, and computer number and computer number. Look at there. You just made drop-down lists. Okay, so we've done it on one row. And you're like, oh my goodness, this is going to take forever because we have to validate for every row. Well, we don't. Because if you remember the little trick I told you earlier about that little bottom right-hand corner knot, right? So if I was to click on this one with the drop-down box, and I click that bottom right-hand knot, click it and drag down for our 21, and then let go, look what happens. Now every single one of those has a drop-down list on them. So now you can select John Smith, Sue Smith, Sarah Smith. And we can do the same thing for book and computer. But remember, whatever we have highlighted will duplicate. right? So we could do book and drag it down, computer drag it down. But what if we just did them both? Let's highlight both those cells and now use that bottom right hand drop down or not and drag it down. Boom. Like that. Now if you'll notice, because I used 21 here, my outline went away because when I copied those cells, these cells don't have a bottom line. And so when I drug them down, my bottom line disappeared. So I'm just going to go ahead and add it back in again. So let me just highlight that, go to our border, and put that border back on. Yeah, there we go. Now our bottom bar is there. Now we're making progress. Okay. I'm going to resize, feel uncomfortable. And I would recommend you do it as well. And let's just go ahead and select a student just to kind of see what it's going to look like. Because sometimes you might want to change fonts, right? Maybe 14 is not your key. Maybe it's something else. All right, looks good. All right, so now we want to keep track of students by row. Like if I went to the printer and I printed this out right now, all these students would be fine, but they would just be student names on and book. There's nothing separating one student from the other. They're kind of all on there. Some of you guys may want to do that. That's fine. But I prefer to separate the students out. I want a separate line so I can see when I print this out, I can see this student, this is all their information. That student, that's all their information. This student, that's all their information. Rather than trying to say, well, I think I can follow this line. This is a pretty short form, right? We only have 3 options here. Can you imagine a really long form where maybe it goes over a couple pages, or maybe if you're doing a landscape mode and it's filling the entire page? Your eyes will lose track of which kid you're on without some kind of guideline. So we're going to go ahead and put in guidelines now. First, I'm going to highlight these and just press my delete button. I'm getting rid of the data there. Those were our examples anyway. Now, just like when we outline the big border, we're going to outline the small one, just one row at a time. And we can go outline. See how you could follow through now? Now, you could also use the everything, right? So this stops, that stops. You can do that. It's totally up to you, your own preference. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I personally want to follow the kid straight through, and maybe I don't want to box it off. So I'm just going to do an outline. And then I'll keep repeating that process until they're all done. Now, in a more advanced session of Google Sheets, I could show you how, instead of doing this, instead of going through each one of them and outlining them, that there are add-ons, and those add-ons to Google Sheets will allow you to add features. And those features, one of them is styles. And so you can set it to where every other line is shaded. Every other line is a different color. It outlines every other line. It just outlines every line. I mean, you can do that all with those add-ons. But that's for another time. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish outlining all my stuff. Now, take in mind, if I was doing every cell, I could just highlight this whole thing and then click this borders, and it would do every border all at one time. So this is just a personal preference of mine. You guys could easily do it the other way. Matter of fact, let me show you. If you highlighted that all, and then you just selected all, boom, they would all be done. Show you how easy that is. Me personally, I'm going to do each and every one. It's a little more tedious, but if you think about it, we could also highlight that and drag them down, right? Over there. Okay, so that's the very basics of setting up a form, and hopefully this helped you guys out a little bit. And stay tuned. We're going to go into more advanced things in the future. So stay tuned.